My hair looks better on this side.
Okay, yeah, we're live. All right. Yeah, your hair looks great. I think it looks fine. So yeah, we're doing another stream. This is officially the third part of our couple series of basically from the moment we met to my transition and then through to where we are in our lives now. Yeah, anything you want to add? I mean, I think that's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Tiffany. This is Skylar.
And I'm Skylar, in case you didn't know.
And
we're married, just FYI.
The last 2 episodes we talked about how we met, some of the changes.
I'm trans. That's the last piece. I'm trans, so hello. Okay, now go ahead. Sorry.
The last 2 episodes we talked about how we met, when you came out to me, going through some of the changes of HRT and getting FFS, and we ended on getting married. So for this episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about what happened after we got married.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, really, just should we do a recap on like what we talked about at a high level leading up to our wedding? Because like basically it's about like me going through transition a little bit and then us just living together. But really like navigating like the family dynamics of a little bit, and trying to figure out like what I guess like how things would work out because we didn't really know going into my transition like how I guess people were gonna react to it and like what your parents or your mom was gonna think and then what my parents were gonna think. A lot of these like this time period was really just us like trying to figure that out piece by piece, but also just enjoying life. I mean, how old were we at this point? Like upper 20s, basically. Yeah.
Mid-20s.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like we were really just getting into our jobs and just enjoying life and like around DC and like with like, young professionals. Because there's a lot of like youngerish people, youngerish, like that's a word. No, but there's a lot of young people around DC, and so we had a lot of friends. You were doing a lot of work things, work activities, and so was I. But I was kind of jumping between jobs, at least at this point, and then we had the unfortunate reality of COVID hitting, which really made it like hard to get out and socialize. So we were really at home a lot during the time. We watched a lot of TV shows. Otherwise, spent a lot of time at home. Really, so okay. So, but really, I think we got more serious about planning our wedding when we met our wedding coordinator. And we went to a couple different open houses, and that was fun. But we navigated that, and then we had COVID hit. We had to reschedule our wedding. We bumped it up a year, and basically we were going to get married in May of 2021. And then had to May of 2020, and then we got married in May of 2020. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm like, keep me honest here, because my memory is not the best.
Yeah, and I think that, in the first episode, we talked a lot about how when you first came out to me, fear was kind of present throughout the first couple of, or I guess the year basically following after you came out and started transitioning. And then basically, I think up until the wedding, this is where, you started to actually explore things. You started to make, visible changes to your physical appearance. And then we talked about how like communication was so key in making sure that, throughout all the major decisions, you always included me, which is great. And I think up until when we actually got to our wedding and going to COVID, that's when I really realized that, on the inside, your heart really didn't change. And that's when I was really, ready to make the commitment to marriage, basically, so, yeah, I think up until that point, probably that was like 2 years after you started transitioning until we had our wedding. And so because of that, I think we stayed together for like long enough for people to know that, that you were the person that I wanted to be with. And even though, fear was like a major factor in the beginning, up until this point, right? I guess until that point, it wasn't it was mostly gone at that point, like, once we had the wedding and things like
I
that.
felt like like each day sort of built our confidence a little bit more because a
Mhm.
lot of it was uncertainty around like what was going to change for me with HRT. I remember that like we were
Yeah,
worried about like those physical changes.
yeah.
And so like every week or at least every day, every week, every month that started to go by, it was like an accumulating
Mhm.
effect of like, okay, we're that much more confident that you're going to be able to, like, I guess, flexibly adapt to this. But that you also wanted this.
Mhm.
'Cause that was my concern was like, I wasn't as worried about you adapting to it all the way because it just kind of felt like there was never really that much strain physically on our relationship. It was more of like, is this something that you're going to want to sign up for? In life because that was sort of my perspective. I was very intentional on like you could leave at any moment, but you had kind of made the decision internally that you weren't going to.
Yeah, and that was great. I mean, even after
Yeah,
you proposed, I felt like I did have the space to, take my time and really figure out what this meant for me and also for us.
yeah,
And that was really great. Yeah.
yeah. No, yeah, it's true, and I mean, like, I think part of that too is our friends were really supportive of like at least us going through the journey. We didn't have really bad reactions except for your mom and well, my
Your
immediate family,
family, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, they were just trying to make sense of it though, because admittingly they didn't see this coming. And so that really like took them by surprise. Um, but basically we go through this timeline and this is what we all covered really in depth in our past streams, our past two streams. So we're gonna talk more about everything from the wedding onward to today. Because really like the last major milestone before the wedding was, I think my facial feminization surgery. Yeah. And I just remember like coming out of facial feminization surgery, just how relieved I was that I was able to get that procedure 6 months before our official wedding. Something we talked about last time was I was sort of uncomfortable with taking photos while I was in like that kind of like in between stage a little bit because I just felt like it was kind of androgynous. I hadn't like made the full switch to like, I guess like transition. You hope you kind of come out and you pass as the opposite sex, and it just felt like I wanted to hit that milestone of facial feminization surgery, really clear that hurdle for me. Even though it was kind of already happening. When I was looking back on the photos and like I don't know if you remember going to the Millennium concert at Echo Stage, but like the photos from that, I was already starting to like really come into my own when it came to that aesthetic. But I guess to like totally clear the hurdles and not have any ambiguity, feminization surgery really like closed the gap on that process.
Mhm.
Um, and like, I don't know if you remember like coming out of it, but like, I think, facial feminization surgery was no joke. Like, I remember just having a lot of swelling and a lot of like, I don't know, I just felt really bad like 2 or 3 days afterwards. It was like it was that a bell curve where it's like pain and from the kind of went up the slope and then peaked at like probably what, like 2 to 4 days, the swelling and all that. And then it started to go down, and then, the recovery was, like, really smooth. But I was so happy with the results. Um, and then from there, we really just resumed wedding planning and then finally had our wedding. Another big detail, though, was the fact that my parents decided to actually come to the wedding,
Mhm. Yeah.
which really, like, shattered our expectations. We didn't expect that, because they were so, like, oppositional slash, like, hesitant about my transition.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um And so, yeah, in like the planning phase, we planned it right on up to the wedding, and then we finally had it in May of 2022,
21.
2021. Oh my gosh, like my years are so off. But it went really well. I think we were both really happy with the wedding. If there was one thing we could have changed. I remember us talking about this, but it was that we would have kept it going longer.
Yeah, that's right. So it was actually ended up being a really beautiful day despite, moving it
Mhm.
forward a year.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think overall that ended up helping, you in particular, because as you mentioned, you did get your FFS during that year of when we actually moved it, and
Mhm.
it's interesting because I feel like this was like your first major surgery, and some people have asked me like, how did I feel about you getting FFS, and honestly, I think for it being like a major one, you had to go under anesthesia. I had to make sure I was there, like for you. To pick up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, I think that I didn't mind at the huge major change. Honestly, I basically
Yeah.
supported it because FFS basically just made you cuter, and I was like, okay, if you want to be cuter, like that's no problem. And
Aw,
yeah.
you're so sweet.
And then, like you mentioned, 6 months later, we do have our wedding. So, yeah, during that period, it was interesting because COVID had just hit. It was like from the period of going into lockdown to our wedding, it was like you just got more beautiful during that time. And then by the time we ended up, starting to slowly go back to work,
Yeah.
a lot of your coworkers and our friends like didn't see you go through the recovery period.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. I didn't even think about that. We actually have our first here. I'm gonna spotlight this for a second. Raise your flag. Where did you get FS, Skylar? By the way, you both look
Oh,
great. Aw.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I got it from a surgeon named Dr. Stock, Dr. K. Koopy. We have all nicknames for him. But he was great. What I really liked about him was that I felt like he was really good at recognizing my like current features that were already feminine and working well for me. So he really was able to help me like tailor the procedures that I actually would benefit from the most, and that way like kind of retain those like the integrity of my like natural face, but also with the feminization that I was after. So those procedures were like my hairline, my brow ridge, and my my trachea. Yeah. Um, and honestly, he was great. He followed up. He was really good at following up with us after the procedure. Was there to like check in with me, and really just, I mean, he took care of us really well,
Yeah.
and told you exactly what to do for
And
aftercare.
I
Yeah.
appreciated the doctor including me. So I remember during the follow-up, he knew that I had to help you take care of you post-op and make sure like
Yes. Yes.
your wound was being cleaned correctly and things like
Yeah,
that.
particularly this incision. Yeah.
Especially the
Just like
hairline.
the hairline one, which you can't even really see anymore. It's like it's literally so hard to see. I guess if I put my hair back, I can kind of see it, but it's like really hard to see. My hair, I have to literally pull it way back to see
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Um,
He
yeah.
was
So
great. Yeah. I mean, he really focused on trying to be natural and then also give you, some of the procedures that you wanted. So highly
right.
recommend him. And he was just, a doctor who had a great bedside manner.
Yeah, bedside manner. That's the right word.
Uh,
Um, True. And like, yeah, so really moving forward. Oh wait, one more question. Came through. Were you able to get your FFS? I'm gonna spotlight it. Were you able to get your FFS covered by insurance? I'm in the process of looking around for FFS surgeons right now. Oh, okay. I was, and the reason is that I knew like so my employer, I was able to select different insurance plans, and I specifically looked for these like gray hairs that drives me crazy. I specifically sought out a plan that had like the most like transition friendly coverage. For like I didn't find anything specific for facial feminization surgery, but I found like just like looking at other surgeries, actually, ironically, gender confirmation surgery was like the most frequently found one that I found in like the looking in those like what are those like plans, like the
oh,
brochures
yeah.
that they give. So definitely check out those brochures if you can for like insurance plans. But I was able to get it covered by picking a plan that like really covered a lot of other procedures. Again, it didn't say anything about facial feminization surgery, but I knew that the odds would be best if it covered other procedures. And so that was sort of my rationale. And I picked this one. It was a Cure First Blue Cross Blue Shield Cure First plan that I had available, and it was a very expensive plan, but I was very intentional to get it for this
Yeah.
reason, knowing that I like keep it forever. Um, and then so I did, and I was able to apply. Dr. Cooperstock actually worked really diligently on the submission process, the application process for insurance, because it is really dicey. Like there was a good chance I may have not been approved. But he just like, I don't know, he just knew what to do. He tried it with different codes. There were a few hiccups in the process where like I didn't. It wasn't that I didn't get approved, but there were like there was back and forth on figuring out what the plans or figuring out what the right codes were to get it covered. But he was able to like figure that out and then get me approved, which was huge in like saving just tons of money in the process. It is something that the doctor you choose, like, you really want to lean on them for their expertise in this process because, like, I don't even know how to begin, like, trying to submit for my own codes. I don't even think you can. I think it has to go through the provider.
Yeah, the provider can
Mhm.
provide the codes of the procedure, and then basically you can either check with insurance, and then insurance can let you know whether they cover it or not.
You know about this because of your first project, right? Your first
Well,
job.
more so about going through IVF because I had to check the
Oh,
codes.
okay.
But we'll
That's
get to
fair.
that a little bit later.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that too. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that was kind of how it works. So I really did it through my doctor. Talking a little bit about like things to look for in terms of choosing a plan. But definitely recommend, looking through the brochures and looking for whatever covers the most transitional surgeries. Best odds of getting it covered through that like really extensive application process.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway,
yeah.
after FFS, a couple months go by, and then it's our wedding.
Yeah. And so then we have our wedding, and this is really just a huge pivotal moment for us. We were already married, but we really wanted to have we're just doing it for so long. And then that went off without a hitch. It was great. It was so much fun. We did a tea ceremony, and we had
Chinese tea ceremony,
a
yeah,
Chinese tea
which is
ceremony.
very
Yeah.
common for Chinese weddings. So we had a kind of a mixture between like Chinese and American traditions. We basically had our like immediate family plus wedding party attend the tea ceremony, and then basically we had like the American ceremony and the reception basically following afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. And we had a DJ too, and it was super awesome. And then so the wedding comes and goes, and we're like, okay, what's next? So we have been saving up money, well, especially you, mainly, for like a down payment for a house.
Mhm.
And so we wanted to move into a house because we were like tired of paying rent for our apartment, and but this was time we were finally moving forward. And so we were trying to find like a house in every single house. This was during the pandemic. So every single house we had tried to apply for was like literally getting bought up like super quick. We were living in DC at the time, and like literally our favorite house that we saw, somebody put an all cash offer down.
Yeah, on the first day.
I know, it was just crazy. And we were like, okay, this
Yeah.
is
It was pretty disheartening because it's like you go to our house, you get really attached to the house
Yeah.
and you submit some of the legal documentation, and try to like, buy the house, and then just for a realtor to come back and tell us, oh yeah, you didn't win because of the all cash offer.
Yeah. So disheartening.
Yeah, we
I mean,
did that 4 or 5 times.
yeah, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's just all this emotional investment as you see the different homes, and you're like, oh, this one really speaks to me. You see something you really like, and you're like, you start to imagine, like, what would life be like living in this space? And then, just to have that opportunity just ripped out from under you because, you don't have, I don't know, however much money in cash, like some hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. It's like, yeah, okay, this is hopeless. Um, so needless to say, that was like really disheartening. We were just kind of like, all right, whatever. We're just gonna stay in our apartment. But I was still looking around. Like I was still had my mind on this. And what I had been thinking about was what if we look a little bit further away where it's less like intense competitive. Because around DC there's so many families trying to move in that it's just it's so hard to get a home. So I had been talking with my parents, and they live down in Richmond, Virginia, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder if we could like get a house there." And so that's essentially what we ended up doing. But it was definitely, a process to get to that point where we could actually, like, make that journey switch. But at Christmas of what, 2022? 2021?
21.
Yeah, keep me
Yeah.
honest. Yeah, 21. Yeah, because we moved in February 2022.
22, yeah.
Yeah. So at Christmas, we made the announcement to my family, and I just remember they thought, like, on the way. That's what they thought, like, we were gonna say. I was like, "No, like, there's not a baby on the way. That is an intensive process, and we haven't even started that."
But yeah, so we ended up, looking at some houses in Richmond. I was okay with it because I went to school in the area. I was fine with moving back and getting back more involved with alma mater. Um,
Oh,
and yeah, and then we started to look around to some of the houses around here, and I think we basically it was like a spur of a moment. MLK weekend, we came down toward, and then realized, okay, well, interest rates are growing up. We gotta put an offer now on one of these houses. Um, and and that's what we did. So it wasn't. I think it was a little coincidental because it was a snowy day, and there wasn't a lot of other people trying to buy a house in the snow.
oh, yeah, the way that we came. So, yeah, it just happened to be this way that, literally, we reach out to the realtor, or, like, to our realtor, we get established, and we're like, "Go look at homes." We're also fighting the interest rate hikes, because the Fed has just announced that they're gonna raise rates on homes, and so we're like, "We gotta move it," because inflation was coming, so we were like, "We gotta get in on this now, or we're gonna be paying, like, we're just gonna be paying, like, double what we would otherwise be
Mhm.
paying." Um, and so that's what we did, and so literally moving right away, it just so happens that that weekend was snowing, which is crazy, but it actually worked out real well because my dad has a pickup truck, and so, us being super committed,
That's how
we
we were able to do
yeah,
tour.
yeah, we drove down, the night before and, stayed over at my parents' house. The next day it was snowing, and it was like it wasn't a blizzard, but there was a good, like 4 inches on
Yeah,
the roads. Like, it was definitely difficult to drive in,
yeah.
but we kept it showing, and our realtor, or yeah, real estate agent, realtor, same thing, right? Um, anyways, he also had a pickup truck. And so we were able to go and meet up with him. We saw 3 different homes that day. And we were just like, "We need to choose now," because, again, those interest rates.
Yeah.
And so, we made the decision on the house we're in now. I think we made the right decision.
Mhm, yeah. I mean, there were, I think, maybe one other buyer who was trying
Yeah.
to, go for this house too, but, we eventually won, but I guess we had, like, the mindset of in DC, like, house buy, we're like, "We gotta make an offer
Yeah.
now."
We were used to, like, making up our minds really quick because there otherwise would be no
Yeah.
way, to do it. So, um, yeah, so we kinda, like, just, I don't know. The mic is
Uh-oh.
quiet. This was the problem last time. I need to look into why this is happening.
Yeah.
Is it still happening? Can you, like, I don't know if is it because we're switching, or is it because, like, even if I'm talking straight for, like, I don't know, however long, like a minute or so, you're still hearing in and out?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
we can just
We'll
continue
just, like,
talking
go and
and
hope that
then
it
yeah.
works, but yeah, she says maybe. Okay. I don't know. Oh, well, we only have 1 mic that's like this, so this is how it's gonna be. Oh, switching. Oh, okay, so it seems to be more
Yeah.
like when we're switching. Okay.
Well, we can just, I guess, maybe just talk closer to
We'll just
something.
do this whenever we're gonna go talk
Yeah.
and, like, turn the mic back and forth. Seems a bit better, no worries.
Okay. But yeah, so that's how we ended up where we are now. And that basically started the next chapter of our life because
Okay. Mhm.
we knew that before, or I guess I should say, like, once we had a house, then we started to think about like the next chapter, which would be building our family.
Mhm.
And that was really important to both of us. I know, like, when I was growing up, I knew I wanted like at least 2 or 3 kids. I always imagined
You
that.
didn't.
And, I mean, I didn't imagine having a wife as my partner, but
Whoops, wild card. Yeah.
I knew that I wanted a family with you.
Yeah. And, like, but before we actually were going to well, we knew we were gonna, like, work on trying to have a family, but we also wanted pets. One of the things that happened when we moved is that Tiffany's mom was done taking care of their family cat. She just, for some reason, never, like, wanted a cat, and I think it was, like, your sister who, like, ended up, like, driving the adoption of that family cat a long time ago, something like that, and basically, she was ready to, like, give it away to, like, I don't know, an adoption agency, so we took that cat in, and it started this, like, snowball effect of us, like, loving cats and realizing just how much we love cats, and so we went and adopted 2 other kittens thinking like, "Okay, he needs friends." In hindsight, this was so dumb because he's so old. He definitely did not need friends, but I think we were just looking for an excuse to have more cats, because we really like I mean, we have that, like, I don't know, hole in our hearts for, like, kids. We really want kids, and so in this case, we were filling it with cats. And so we went and adopted 2 boy kittens, um, and we loved them. We named them Smokey and Stormy, and they were absolutely perfect. Do you wanna talk about them?
Sure, yeah. So, what was so great is that actually, before we go and talk about cats, up until this point, Skylar had always been a dog person, and so we weren't sure how it would be like with you and cats. But I think quickly after we got these 2 boy kittens, you realize how cute and cuddly they were. One of them is silver, which you wanted a silver cat, another one was a polydactyl, so basically a cat with, like, more digits than normal. So, for example, front claws, cats usually have 5, but he had 7. So that is what really attracted us to these 2 brothers.
Mhm.
And, honestly, after we got these cats, like, Skylar was like, "Oh, I wanna get some more."
Oh, yeah. So so I wasn't happy with just 2. I wanted more, and, I was like, "Well, we can at least have 2 more. We should get 2 girls." So 2 girls to go with 2 boys, right? Like, seems like a good pair. Unfortunately, right after we adopted the 2 girls so we adopted 2 girls, Sammy and Sassy are their names. So we ended up getting this theme of having all these S names for our cats. Um Oh, wait. Racer says here we got another comment. Dogs for the win. Cats are cute too, though. Right? Okay, so I always grew up with dogs, and I was very used to dogs, and I used to be partial to dogs because I was like, dogs are loyal, they're not gonna run away from you, and you don't have to clean up litter for, like, your dog. So it's like, there seems like a lot of wins there. Um, but now, like, I guess ever since we adopted cats, like, I don't know, my heart is so tethered to these cats. I'm just like, they're so cute. That's just what gets me. Like, I can't help it, but they're just so adorable and cute. And the other nice thing I've noticed about cats, though, is they don't smell. Like, they smell good. I mean, if they don't smell though. They groom themselves, they clean themselves. So it's like, I don't know, less maintenance that way. Growing up, my dog always, like, stank and was like, "Oh," like, I realize it now because we have these cats, but anyways, there's definitely differences for sure. Um, yeah,
But
you
I
go
would
ahead.
say dogs are not out of the question.
Ah!
Skylar still wants a dog,
I
and I'd be open to having one. But, I think we soon found out that you could scale up with cats pretty quickly, so that's how we ended up getting with so many cats. And I guess what we didn't realize is that there were a bunch of, stray cats that lived in our backyard. So because of that
Wait, you're jumping though, you're jumping.
okay.
Jumping the timeline. So she's right though. There are stray cats in our backyard, but we need to get back to the sad story about what happened to Stormy really before we go into the additional cats because there's a lot more cats to come. Um, yeah, and so what we didn't realize is we adopted Smokey and Stormy from PetSmart. It's like there's a pet adoption agency around, and so we adopted them. But what we didn't know is that they actually were both sick. And this is where the story gets really sad. They actually both have this condition. Well, we don't know this for sure. I should back up. We don't know this for sure about Stormy, but we do know this about Smokey. Um, and it's most likely that they had the same illness, truthfully. But we found out later that they had something called FIP, which some kittens can have. And it's line infectious peritonitis. And basically, what it is it's a form of like a coronavirus for cats, and it is fatal. So they will die from it. And again, we didn't know.
Well,
Well,
5 to 10 cats who have the FIP becomes fatal. So a lot
that's
of
right.
cats can get it, but because of certain mutations, only like a small population is where it's fatal.
Yes.
But I'll let Skylar tell a story because I'm still pretty sad about it. So there you go.
So yeah, we didn't say this, but one of the things about Smokey and Stormy is that Smokey is my cat and Stormy is her cat. So this is like really hitting Tiffany hard because even though they're both sick, Stormy is showing the symptoms, and Smokey, you can't really tell anything's wrong with him. And Stormy just gets worse and worse and worse. His health just declines. And so Tiffany is spending so much time with him. She's even taking him on little walks outside, but he's not walking very far because he's so sick. And we just didn't know what to do. We've taken him to the vet multiple times. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. And so by the time we took him in again to see what was wrong with him, it was just too late and he passed away. And that was like one of the most traumatic experiences for us, like right off the bat, because we like had such hopes for this cat. And then just like, had to lose them so quickly. And it was like absolutely traumatic and devastating to us. But the good news, some good news is that his brother, Smokey, started showing some signs too, getting worse, but he had a slightly different form of FIP where his belly was swelling and this is part so there's 2 kinds. There's, effusive FIP and, what's the other one? Do you remember?
Oh, there's I guess like a colloquial term is water drip.
Yeah, okay, wet
Yeah.
or dry FIP is how they call it, and Smokey
Smokey had
had
wet.
the FIP version, which meant he had this swollen belly, and they diagnosed that he most likely had FIP because of the swollen belly. It was funny though, we kinda made jokes that he kinda looked pregnant, while at the same time we were really scared. Um, But because we got a diagnosis, our vet was able to tell us about, like, options we could do to treat him. But the funny thing is that the main option is this medicine. It's like a black market medicine. Um, and so, like, he actually couldn't prescribe it because he was like, I'm not allowed to." So he wrote it down on this piece of paper, and he was, like, sliding it over to us, and he was like, I didn't say this, but here's where you need to go. You need to go to this Facebook support group, FIP Warriors, and check out this website and follow their advice, and you might be able to save your cat. And so that's immediately what we did. I went to join the Facebook group. Of course, this is what we're gonna do because we love our cat. And so we go and join this Facebook group and like do all this research and find out that there is a drug that's out there to save but it's really expensive. And like, so we're like, all right, are we gonna do this? And we're just like, yeah, we have to do this. We love him so much. And so that's exactly what we do. We order the medicine, and like right away, he responds like positively to it and like bounces back, which was amazing. Um, and like, what was I gonna say? But the hardest part about this process was giving him a shot. So in order to administer this medicine, you had to like hold him still and give him a shot. And this was really, really hard because we had to do this for 90 days. And so it was gonna be a long road to recovery, but it was so worth it. Like at first giving him the shots was pretty easy because he didn't have a lot of energy. But as we gave him the shots, he started recovering and like we could see him getting like stronger and stronger. And then he started getting more squirmy and like jumping out of my lap. So it got really hard to give him the shots. I remember like having to get you to like hold him down while I got the needle and like the shot, give him his medicine. Um, but eventually we got through it, and it was like I think my 30th birthday. That like it was over and we were done and it was like the best birthday present ever. So like by the time we started all the way up to then, um, I gave him shots and then finally it was done and that whole chapter was behind us. And that was like really
Yeah. So he's still alive a few years later.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, still alive to this day. Um, and so anyways, we kept adopting cats. That's kind of how the story goes. Um, and so, oh, we have someone saying no. That's weird. I think oh, okay. I was gonna say, like, thought Kevin's joining us. Um, anyways, yeah, so from there on, we had started adopting more cats, because we knew we wanted a ginger cat, and so, we went to PetSmart and, signed up to adopt a ginger cat, but I saw 2 other cats there and immediately fell in love and was like, "Oh, Tiff, I want these 2, what would you call them? Just like"
They're like or they're like kind of candy
Mhm.
or
Yeah, like these cream colored cats, but they were so cute, and so, I just, like, couldn't help it. I'm really bad at this, like, not falling victim to, emotional pull by, like, cats. Like, when I see their faces, I just really want them. And, of course, that's what the PetSmart people count on and the adoption agency. Um, I'm just, bad at saying no, basically. And so we, signed up to adopt them, and, and yes, yes, ginger kitty. Yeah, his name so we did end up getting a ginger cat. His name is Spicy. Um, and his actual name at the PetSmart was Ramen. So we thought it went together, Spicy Ramen. And that was really fun. But then unfortunately, what we didn't realize is back to what you were saying, Tiff, in the spring. Um, we have stray cats behind our house, and, well, let's just say that turns into the next saga of our cat story. Do you wanna explain, like, how we began to see, more cats?
yeah. Yeah, so, we started to see some of these cats in our backyard, and it's funny because at this point, we also have a out our indoor patio. So we started to we work from home, and then we started to take our meetings outside, on the patio, the screened-in porch, and then all of a sudden, I remember that we saw a kitten in the bush, and we're like,
Oh, yeah.
what is this doing here?" And then we slowly saw that there were more than just 1 kitten. And then the next thing is that, we were, like, really interested in them. They were, like, really cute. There was, like, this cute little calico one, and then I remember turning to Skylar one day, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that one is so cute. I want it."
Yeah.
And next thing we know, we start to get more acclimated to our voice. We start to put out some food for them, so they're starting to get a little bit more comfortable getting closer to us. And
Mhm.
mind you, they're like feral stray cats, so they're not used to humans at all. So it kind of takes a little bit to warm up to us. And um, basically, what happened next is that we put a bowl of food with it inside of our screened-in porch, and we waited for these little kittens to come into our porch, and it was kinda strange. It kind of felt like the mother cat also, like, dropped off the cat
Yeah.
because she was, like, getting really close too and being
Mhm.
comfortable and, like, eating the food and things like that. And then I guess you wanna tell this next part about
Yeah. So, yeah, basically, each day is going by, and I'm working outside, and I'm like, the cats are, like, hanging around outside the porch, but our cats are inside our porch, and we're like they're outside all the time with us, and so they're smelling each other through the screen, through the screen, and I think that, like, showed those kittens that we're, like, good owners or, like, good vibes, basically. So the mom just kinda, like, kept hanging around, and these kittens are around our, like, porch, and I'm like, "Tiff, we have to rescue them." And so we're, like, building up this grand plan, and like Tiff said, like, we're introducing food and getting them warmed up to us more and more, and then finally one day, they're hanging around the door, and I'm like, "Okay, this is the perfect moment." I get all of our cats inside, and I, like, close the door so they can't come out, and I open the screen porch door, and I prop it open and put food inside the porch. And, you can literally see this in the timeline video, but all 4 of the kittens, like, start meandering into the porch unknowingly that I can close the door, and then they're stuck in there, and I'm gonna be able to catch them. Now, I just wanna say, this is not the recommended way to catch cats at all. Like, completely not supposed to do it this way, 'cause you're gonna terrorize the cat when you go to, like, try to actually catch it, which is exactly what I ended up doing on accident. I didn't know this at the time because I hadn't done enough research. You're supposed to use a cage and, like, like, put a towel over the cage so they can't see you and they don't get traumatized. Well, that's all out of the, you know, what is it? Out of the door or whatever. Like, they're getting traumatized this time. Um, but it was to catch them. So, ultimately it was for the best. But that's exactly what happens. They all wander in, and as soon as they all wander into the porch, I close the door and I'm like, Tiff, hurry and get what did I ask you to get? The carrier?
Yeah, the carriers put them upstairs.
Yeah. So I was like, go ahead and get the carrier. And we got our cat carrier for our other cats, and I got these giant gloves on, and I scooped them up after finally catching them in the porch and shoving them into the carrier, and then bringing them into a dog kennel that was upstairs in one of our bedrooms to put them all in so that they could get like over time. Because like we wanted to put them all together and just have them be inside and let them relax after, like, the traumatic catching so that they could just, like, get used to being inside more, and not be so scared.
Yeah, so I think at this point, they were about, like, 2 months or so. So we did do some research that know that basically from, like, the 2 to 4-month period as kittens, this is, like, the critical period for them to get socialized. So that's exactly what we did. We tried to spend as much as we could with these kittens. We slowly fed them food so that they
Mhm.
got used to us. We would slowly, like, open the cage, and then we'd play with them so they know that, we're okay. And then yeah, basically, they started to trust us. We started to, like, introduce them to other humans too so
Yeah,
that they would know that we're okay, and, a couple of weeks go by, and they seem to be a lot happier and a lot acclimated.
yeah. Yeah. We actually, like, we brought him to our 4th of July. So at 4th of July, we go to my parents' beach house, and, we took him with us in the kennel, and we put him in the bedroom there, and that was, like, the first breakthroughs we had with them, like, warming up to us and actually letting us touch them and pet them without trying to, like, run away. And so it was actually pretty quick that, like, it only took, like, a week before they started to, like, really warm up to us.
Mhm.
Um, which was awesome. And then, well, we just never have had the heart to, like, I don't know, give them away. So we just kept them in the house, and they're part of the family now. And so,
And that's how we ended up with 12
yeah,
cats.
basically, yeah. But also all throughout this time, we've been on, like, what I guess that we could call our fertility journey, with, like, trying to have kids. Yeah. Do we wanna talk about that?
Oh, sure.
Okay. I didn't know if you were, like, okay with that. I didn't ask
Okay,
you. Yeah.
okay, so this whole time, we've actually been trying. So
Mhm.
basically, if we actually rewind a little bit and go back to this time where we were giving shots to the Smokey who had the cat with FIP, this is actually when I started to go to the fertility clinic. Because, like I said, once we moved into our house, we were ready for, like, the next stage.
Mhm.
So basically, this might be a little surprising to hear, but, whenever I think back to Skylar's transition, it wasn't really the hormones or the surgery that was, like, the hardest part. I would say that the hardest part was me realizing that I wouldn't be able to have, like, a normal, I guess, pregnancy journey. I don't know if that's, like, the right term, but basically, once I realized that, because of you going on hormones, we wanna be able to, get pregnant, like, I guess, like other hetero couples. That kinda hit me really strongly, and I was like that was, like, probably the hardest part when I realized, like, what I had taken for granted as, like, an easy process. You hear stories about, girls getting pregnant really easily, and all of these things, especially when you're younger, or I should say at least, your parents warn you that this could happen. So, in my mind, like, this should have been, like, something easy or natural to do. Um, but yeah, I think once I realized that it was so hard, or it's gonna be a little bit more challenging to get pregnant, that's actually when I realized that was the hardest part of the transition. So besides, like, your physical changes, it was just, like, us trying to have a family that was really
When do you think that was that you, like, first had that realization that you weren't just gonna get, like, I don't know, pregnant on accident or by, like, happenstance through, like, the typical.
yeah, so we were still living in DC at this time. I remember exactly, like, a date or a month where the realization hit me, but it must have been around when you were, like, starting to bank your sperm, and we were trying to talk about what are the future steps of how this would look like together. I think at that time, I had also just read, like, Michelle Obama's Becoming book, and she had this chapter where it was really hard for her to have kids, and she talked about having, like, IVF, and, Barack was doing something, like, not at the house, and she had to be alone and administer these needles with fertility medicine. And I think that just kinda scared me too, just also, like, having the realization that, 1, we don't know if I will go through IVF, but
Mhm.
also knowing that, it's gonna be a journey for us to have kids. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what really, like,
Yeah, something interesting from my perspective in this was, I knew I had done a lot of research to know the impact on fertility that HRT or hormone replacement therapy would potentially have for me, and so, I, like, realized that, I should do my diligence to bank my sperm before I ever go to transition with hormones, like, before I literally ever start my single first, like, hormone. Um, and so that's what I did with my therapist's help. I got a urologist's opinion on how many vials I would need to save up, like, how many, I guess, specimens, for lack of a better term, and I, like, went through the process to, um, store all of this up. And literally the day that I start HRT was the same day as my last sperm banking appointment. And I like so strongly recommend this for any trans woman considering transition. Like, please, please take the time to research fertility options and think long term about this. Because so many prominent mainstream YouTubers, trans YouTubers, have regretted that they didn't do this before. Like Blair White immediately comes to mind, and there's others too, um, where it's like, oh my gosh, like, you really want to do this. Oh, Liz has a question. She says, "Did Skylar not free sperm?" No, I did. This was one of the major things that I did before, medically transitioning, because I really believe in keeping as many options open as possible, and I knew that kids were really important to me. And so, I consulted that urologist and went to how many sessions was it? Like 4 or 5, banking sessions, where, like, you have to go in a room and you have to do, like, the thing and, like, save it into a vial and try to, like, shoot as much as you can into the vial for lack of better, like, words. Oh gosh, this is, like, getting a little bit R-rated here, but basically, did that, like, 4 or 5 times, and, I am so glad I did this, because that way, it would help preserve that fertility, and they'll do, like, tests on it and give you a report after you do your session, so you know how many vials you actually saved, and, like, what it translates to. And when I went and saw the urologist, I told her straight up, like, "I wanna have, like, as many as potentially 4 or 5 kids." 4 is, like, probably a good number, maybe 3, um, or, like, somewhere in that range of 3 to 5, I guess. And, she was like, "Okay, I think you need, like, 15 or 16 vials." And so I said, "Okay, great, noted." And I decided that I would go try to double that number to, like, give myself the full chance of odds of, like, having all those kids. And so that's exactly what I did, and I ended up with, like, 29 vials, which was fantastic for, like, planning on this. But again, the last day I did it was the day I started HRT because I was like, I just was like, "Yeah, I think we have enough by this point," and was able to go forward on that. Okay,
and I
so
think just to note,
yeah.
like, your planning ahead and thinking about family planning was, like, one of the reasons why you started or it took, like, I think, like, 10 or 11 months for you to actually before you actually started HRT because you knew that you wanted a family.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, at the end of the day, like, this is where we're at, where it was very good that you actually made those additional files. So basically, yeah, at this point, I started to go into, the fraternity clinic to
Mhm.
try to figure out what are our different options, how does this look like? And, I think first off, the doctors, they try to assess, like, where you're at. They wanted to try, IUI, so basically our artificial insemination. So this is where, where basically we were able to transfer some of Skylar's specimen over to our clinic. They were able to thaw the things, and then
Mhm.
basically we would try artificial insemination. So I think we tried this about 3 times, and there wasn't really any success. I don't to this day, I don't know if the reason why is because they divided it up between so many vials, like, that might have been a cause why it was, like, a low count that
Mhm.
decreases the odds, but regardless, basically the doctor decided, like, IUI wasn't the way to go. They didn't wanna continue selling our limited number of samples and then keep trying with something that won't work.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think, so I was hopeful that we wouldn't need to, like, escalate the insemination protocols, like, really basically what I'm saying is I was hopeful that the intrauterine insemination where they, like, take the sperm and just inject it into the uterus that method would work because that was the easiest one where, like, you wouldn't have to do anything, you could just go in, have the procedure done, and then come home. The problem is that we had tried this for a good number of times. How many times? 3? 3 times. We tried this method and we had no success. And they do, like, track the fertility window and the cycle so that you come in at, like, the best time, for it to happen. But we still had no luck, and so we did this 3 times and, no success. So our options were that we could well, actually, it was really just one option, I guess, which was IVF, right? They didn't say anything about ICI, intra cervical, insemination, I don't think. No, they didn't say that, but that's, like, another one that if you search this on the web, you'll find stuff about that. But instead, they were really just like, "You need to go up to, like, IVF, in vitro fertilization." Um, and so that was what, we had to start doing, and I'll admit, this is where I hadn't done enough of my own research on this. I didn't realize how involved this process would be for you, to do in vitro fertilization. 'Cause there's a lot more medical steps you have to do to, like, time the cycle right and to have all the monitoring done for you to, like, to know when is your most, like, just to have all the things aligned for, like, your fertile window for when that's supposed to happen. Do you wanna talk in detail about that process at all?
Yeah, so basically, well, if we're thinking about like the timeline of things, when when the doctor had decided that like artificial insemination wasn't the option for us to have kids. This is actually before we start IVF, when you start to plan for your surgery for breast augmentation. So I don't know if we want to take a little detour to talk about that surgery because that's technically like the timeline before I actually start IVF.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
A lot of things
okay,
going
yeah, we have a lot of
on.
things going on, but, we're gonna pivot back to my transition. So I'm not totally done medically transitioning at this point. I've been on hormones for, gosh, how many years? Like 3, 4 years now by the time I'm looking for breast augmentation.
Yeah.
It was something like that. I really wanted to wait for the hormones to do everything that they would in terms of body changes, before I actually, like, would consider a surgery for, my breasts, and so what, like, that way I could really know, like, how much I would get from hormones versus, from natural, I guess, fat accumulation, instead of, like, just jumping straight to a breast augmentation. But I still had dysphoria around my chest, and I remember, like, telling you, I was like, "I think I wanna get a breast augmentation." Um, and you were a little nervous about this because you were like, "I'm not sure I'm gonna be okay with this, like, how it's gonna feel." But you supported me in the end, and you were like, "I know you really need this," and you brought this up multiple times. Um, and so you remain, like, supportive through it. But I basically, continued through planning on, breast augmentation because I was like, "This is the last, like, piece of my dysphoria that I really wanna just have behind me, and then I'll know, like, I'm not gonna go for any further procedures." Um, and so I started planning, this out, and one of the things I did was reach out to a healthcare clinic in DC, Whitman Walker is the name of it, and they were super helpful in, like, helping me plan out, um, the steps of what I would need to do to contact specialists that were in, I guess, not in network, but that, like, were good with insurance and, give me, like, different options for, different surgeons in the area close by to where DC is. Um, and so one of those a couple of those were in Virginia, but one of them specifically stood out because it was University of Virginia, in Charlottesville. And I was like, "Oh, I know, like, Charlottesville pretty well," and, they have a good reputation at this plastic surgery center. So I reached out and booked a consult and then went in, to describe, like, what I wanted out of this process. Did you go with me to this appointment? No. Okay, I couldn't remember. Do you have any thoughts you wanna fill in during this time, like, leading up to the consultation?
Um, yeah. So, as you kinda alluded to, I think this surgery was a lot more, um, well, I guess impactful to me rather than your FFS. So,
Mm,
for me, I feel like the breast augmentation surgery was kind of more, definitive to, like, women than the FFS was. Like, in my mind, the FFS, like I said, was just like, surgery gonna make you cuter, like, that was fine. But the breast augmentation was, like, something that would actually, like, make you more definitive, like, as a woman. So, because of me, I've always grown
wait, can you explain, like, so facial feminization surgery would just make me cuter, but getting a breast augmentation was, like, explicitly female coded.
yeah.
That's how you're processing this mentally, right?
And because I always grew up straight and didn't really have, like, an attraction to women,
Mm,
that was, I feel like, a big, dissonance within, like, how I kind of viewed my sexuality. So, I this was, like, the one that was, like, hardest for me to accept out of, if we're only talking about 2 surgeries, but out of the 2, this one was the harder one.
well, you could frame it in terms of changes and, like, HRT well, social changes, HRT, facial feminization surgery, and then breast augmentation. And
Mhm.
so out of all 4 of those, you would say the breast augmentation was the hardest.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, of course I wanna be supportive because this is ultimately, like, your body can make the decision, but I know that, you really value my thoughts as well, so this one was a little bit harder for me to get behind because, like I said, I never been with, another woman besides you, so it was hard for me to think about, like, how I would feel afterwards and, like, how would our intimacy be. But, yeah, I think up until this point, like, you getting your consultation, you talking with the doctor and talking about the plans, I guess it didn't really hit me until maybe closer to, like, the week of your surgery when
Mm.
I was like, "Okay, I know that, of course, Skylar's not gonna go back, but this is where, I'm thinking a lot about how will this be after the surgery? Like, how am I gonna be, like, towards you?" So, yeah, I think that's I'll pass it back to you.
Well, I have more questions for you, like, to prompt you to talk more about what helped you work through it. But before we get to that, let's just go to the consultation. So I go up to UVA and I have this consultation, and I like the hardest thing about the breast augmentation, unlike FFS, was I had to give them like how much I wanted done. So I had to like choose like my boob size basically. But the thing was is that you don't get to choose a boob size, you choose how much, like, they inject or how big the implant is, that's what they do. You choose the size of the implant, and so, I reasoned out that I wanted, like, the same kind of, like, approach that I did with my facial feminization surgery, which basically meant that I wanted to go as big as I could go without incurring additional incisions, because I didn't wanna risk the unsatisfaction or dissatisfaction of not going, large enough. Because I had, like, been reading a lot online, and there were some trans women that were like, "I wish I had done more," and then some were that were like, "I wish I had done less." And I was like, "Well, I'm getting this surgery done, so I would rather lean towards the more side than the less side, but I don't want them to have to, like, create additional incisions to get the implant in." So I just told him, I was like, "I think I want around the 500 cc marker." So that was, like, the size implant I was choosing, but I told him, like, "If it's too big or you don't think it looks right, just go smaller, but if you think it can go bigger, then go a little bit bigger." But that's essentially the range and the target goal I have. but I know that on the table, the surgeon's gonna have the best eyes. He's gonna be able to see what's gonna give the best result. And I would rather trust his judgment in making that call than, like, prescribe a specific size that I would want, not knowing, like, how it might actually look in the end.
But I know that you said
Mhm.
that you wanted to lean bigger, but also your you was also you wanted it to look natural. Like, you didn't wanna look, like,
Yes.
too big where you knew exactly, like, "Okay, yeah, this person had surgery." But you wanted it to be more natural in, like, a way that you wouldn't regret it. I just wanted to add that too.
No, you're totally right. That was definitely the big consideration because everything again that I'm going for is just to bring out the femininity in my aesthetic that, otherwise is already pretty much there. But to like complete it essentially. I'm not trying to be like a supermodel. I'm just trying to like complete the look. Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna show this one because this is funny. But that is actually like so true in this, Liz, like, go big or go home. I mean, it's funny, but it's kinda true. It's like, you gotta, like, commit or, you shouldn't do it. But at the same time, like, I understand people that don't or, like, women that don't wanna add too much because, I mean, I'll be honest, like, when it comes to, like, boobs, they are not exactly the most practical thing you could, have. So it's like, it's not exactly gonna allow you to do more, but it's definitely gonna help, like, for me, I kinda felt like I had broad shoulders, and so for me, it helps, like, frame that more feminine look on the upper, like, chest. And so it gets that aesthetic, that I really like, especially when it comes to wearing dresses, like I'm wearing right now, where it's like having the boobs just, like, really helps bring it in for, like, that feminine essence, um, but, which is, like, a big part of transition, and so um, and then, yeah, okay, yeah, see, now she's saying the natural look is best. Okay, yeah. Well, we're not talking like massive honkers here. We're talking like, reasonably large boobs. That's what we're talking about. Um, anyway, so the consult goes smoothly. I tell him all these things and then finally book the surgery and then go through the surgery. Um, and then come out and I'm like, and I see you and I'm just like, oh, hey cuties, like, hey.
Yeah, so we go through the surgery and, I need to be there as a support person to drive Skylar home, and, I just wanna also be there for, like, the big moment, right? I remember, I went to a local coffee shop, just to wait for the surgery to occur, and then I get a call from the doctor, and he's basically saying, like, "Surgery went well, and I think she'll be happy when she wakes up." And I was like, "Oh, okay, good, good." So yeah, I go back to the hospital and you're starting to wake up and you're still feeling the anesthesia. So you're saying such like nice things to me, like how most like beautiful woman. I was like, oh, thank you.
Mhm.
But I know like, you're waking up, so you're just like, saying things that come to your mind unfiltered. So it's kind of nice that that was what you're thinking. But yeah, I would say that, the surgery did go well.
Did it take a
And
long time?
no, I don't think so. Maybe 1 or 2 hours most.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I think, you go home, you do have some interesting, like, side
Oh,
effects.
yeah. Yeah, so one thing happened that I totally didn't expect, and it's that I had this, like, really random allergic reaction to the
The surgical thing?
surgical. Oh, yeah, so we actually don't even know exactly what happened, but I had this horrendous reaction that almost looked like I was getting infected.
Yeah.
It was like borderline infection, and it was, like, right around where the incision was, and they put, like, medical tape on, and then you're supposed to wear a surgical bra afterwards that, like, holds everything together because you don't want it moving around, and, I just remember, like, after this procedure, it got so red and inflamed, it was crazy, and it was so scary. It was, like, so
Yeah.
inflamed and
You're
red,
like,
and it
"Is
was
this
spreading.
normal?"
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I literally went to patient first because I was like, "I need to get someone to check this out." And the doctors, and they were like, "Oh, yes, your body is having some sort of allergic reaction to whatever they use, whether it was the medical tape or the surgical bra, something they did, your body's reacting to it." And, I had to take antibiotics, like, right away to cut down on the infection and, like, suppress the inflammation, which was absolutely insane. Um, oh, this is such a good question from Liz. Was there skin expanded prep before the augmentation? Um, so, they actually warned me about this when I chose
Nice.
the size, yeah. They said it's going to feel tight around your skin. There is no skin prep that they have you do, because it's all gonna happen after the implants go in. So basically, they put the implants in, and it feels like it's almost like it's hard to breathe a little bit. I mean, it's you can still breathe. It's like you're wearing a corset or something that's, like, restricting you a little bit. And what it is it's the feeling of your skin, reacting to being stretched out, by the breast forms. But over time, your skin just kinda naturally stretches. I guess it's like elastic sort of, like, you can just stretch a good bit. Um, and so, like, that's what happens. And so the skin just kinda naturally stretches out, and over time, that, like, feeling of tightness goes down. And thank goodness because it was, like, really tight when I was, like, freshly out of surgery. And then the other thing that happens is that, your boobs look really, really perky because, again, the skin's really tight, so it's, like, hasn't had time to adjust to it. Um, but that all takes place, like, over the months that follow afterwards. Your skin stretches and the boobs start to, like, look a little bit more natural as they sag and whatnot. Um, so, yeah, really good question though, like, because otherwise, you might think, like, there's some, like, stretching involved beforehand, but there's none. Um, did you wanna add anything to the recovery period when I was, like, scared of my, allergic reaction?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, but I also thought it was funny that because of the extra weight on your chest, you were like, "Oh, I can see why people might have back problems from this."
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so true. I was like, "Oh, okay, back pain has a whole new meaning now." Like, when you have, like, another 10 pounds on your chest, you're like, "Okay, I see where this is coming from." Like, a lot more empathetic to women with big boobs that are, like, dealing with that. Because like, I can relate to it now. Like,
Yeah.
gosh. Um Anyway, so, yeah, no, it was definitely, like, a scary time when, like, all that allergic reaction was happening, but thankfully, we got past it, and there's no, like I don't think there's any, like, scarring or anything, like, from that. It was really inflamed. Um, but basically, yeah, 6 months later, went in for my, I guess, like, my final post-op check-in, because I went through a couple just to make sure everything else was working, and, uh, Liz says, "Welcome to womanhood." Oh my gosh, I know, right? Like, these are, like, the pains of, so many women have to go through, and yeah, so I totally get that. Like,
And
okay.
and you also just, like, coming to a realization that they, like, get in the way of doing things or, like, picking up something that's really bulky, you're like, "Oh, I can't do this the same way."
Well, because when you're a male, you can put things well, I guess when you're a man or when you don't have boobs, that's really the better way to put it, because any of those things, someone could technically say, "I'm male or a man," or whatever. But when you don't have boobs, you can pick things up and, like, lean it against your chest. But once you have boobs, that becomes wildly uncomfortable. Like, you do not wanna be lifting boxes and, like, leaning them against your boobs. It's like, "Oh." Like, no. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, but, for sure, I think, like, after 6 months, should I keep going about the 6 months? Okay, yeah. So then after 6 months, I do my final post-op check-in, and I go in and they look at the breasts and they're like, "Okay, everything looks good." But I did have one small side effect that, I do think is good to call out because this can happen. It's a small side effect, but it's well known, and that's that you can have, I think what they call is, like, encapsulation, or it's like, essentially, it's like scar tissue that forms around the implant and locks it in a little bit more. So my left side is a little bit more firm than my right side, because of this encapsulation effect that happened, which is, again, just a little bit of scar tissue that can build up. And it's common, they see this a lot, and if it gets really bad, they'll take out the form. But some people react with this, like, more than others, and so I did have this reaction, but again, it was more mild and it was just on the left side. So, I was grateful it wasn't, like, serious. But it was, one unexpected side effect that did come out of the procedure. So that was just good to know. Now we should probably pivot the conversation to the more juicy part, which is how you were able to kinda react and work through this. Because I remember after the procedure, this did impact our bedroom life a little bit. Um, do we wanna talk about that?
I don't know. I won't go into full details,
That's okay.
because, I'm a more private person when it comes to that. But I will say that, it was a change. You know, that first week after the surgery, I was not fully comfortable, and I wanna say I give myself the grace in saying that because it was a big change.
Yes.
Of course, with any surgery that you have, it affects your partner.
Mhm.
So basically, I try to be as supportive as I can. So, if you needed something, post-op, I would be able to help you, maybe, like, clean your wound a little bit, or maybe give you, like, a better look at something that you couldn't see yourself. Um, but there was always that thing in the back of my mind where, I'm not fully comfortable with this, but, I wanna be there. Again, like, this is your body, like, you can make the decision, but I needed to make a decision for myself as well. So, I think at this point, it was probably like a week or 2, maybe actually no, fast forward, it's probably like a month or something because you needed, like, a certain number of weeks to recover before, like, anything can happen. But let's just say, like, we took, like, baby steps to figure out where we were in the bedroom. You didn't really have the expectation that, bam, from the first time we tried that I was gonna be okay with it,
Mhm.
and I knew that I myself, I knew that wasn't gonna happen either. So I never, like, communicated that expectation either.
Yeah.
But I would say within maybe, like, I don't know, 2 to 3 months after the surgery, I became a little bit more comfortable, especially because, I see you, like, every day, so again, like, that kinda reinforces, like, "Okay, they're here to stay, like, this is how, like, you're gonna look like." So, it was an adjustment period, but I would say by the end of that summer, we were mostly back to, normal, just with just the way things were. So it was, like, really difficult, and for, like, anyone who's listening who has a spouse, like, if your spouse does go through or your partner goes through, like, a major it's okay to, not fully accept things,
Mhm.
in the beginning, and just to know that, again, like, communication and just being honest about things will be helpful in terms of making your relationship stronger. So, we went through some challenges, and there were some initial barriers, but in the end of the day, I would say that because I also have, like, an open mind to this, and ultimately I knew that this was making me happy, I we basically worked it out, like, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanna stress what you just said about, like, not accepting right away. I think that's totally normal and healthy for some people. Like, I think there's always a process of acceptance, at least if it's genuine acceptance. Um, and that's something I really respected in what we had to happen because I knew, like, this was gonna be a curve for you. And that was part of why I wanted to tell you about my plans to get the procedure as early as I did. Because I started telling you, like, at least a year before I ever, like, booked it. Actually, even before that, I just didn't act on it until it was like, "Alright, now it's time to, like, go forward." It was, like, a good year or so ahead. Um, and so, um, I feel like, at the end of the day, it was like, uh, I just wanted to give you the space and the time to, let you figure it out and come around to it. So it was about, like, 3 months before, like, things were sort of, like, back to normal in, like, terms of bedroom life. Um, and so it wasn't right away, but it was a process where by getting used to me in this way, in this form, you are able to make that progression and reach that point. Um, yeah, and I think that's really something, and something I really admired in, like, your response to it, because I just really felt like you really love me, and it's like, I can really see that in how you demonstrated that, like, willingness to, you know, not only respect, like, the bodily autonomy aspect, but just, be there for me and work through it with me. And I felt like in the end, it actually ultimately strengthened our relationship, from the standpoint of that it was just another hurdle that we worked through and are, like, really happy with our life today. Do you want to speak more to that?
No, I don't think so. I think that basically sums it up. But yeah, I just wanna do reiterate that with any change, it does take time. So, allow yourself that space and that grace. Just ultimately, if it's meant to be, you'll work it out, and hopefully you're always just talking about it and taking the
Yeah,
slow steps, taking like, the baby steps to get to the point where you're both comfortable.
right. Yeah. And so, yeah, really, like, after that summer, we went ahead and yeah, I'm gonna spotlight this. This is an amazing comment from Liz. Again, she's been on fire today. What an amazing woman Tiffany is. Liz, I could not agree more. This woman is something else. She is my rock, my I could go on the whole list, but let's just say we'll just keep it at rock, because you really are like the basis of how I mean, you're the reason like I wake up every day so happy and so grateful for for everything that we've like managed to reach to this point. And so it's like, yeah, you're just a breath of fresh air like every day. Um, so I totally agree, Liz. Thanks so much for like, putting that comment out there. Um, yeah, and I love it. The fire and the heart. So true. And so, yeah, like, but to continue on the timeline, because the story's not over. We continue trying to have kids and going through these IVF cycles, with no luck or success. We kept doing this and we kept doing this until spring of, actually, not even spring, winter, January, right? Was it January of this past year? Um, when you got, um, there was a point, where, we had been going through this,
You want me to just take over?
yeah, you go ahead and take over. Yes, yeah.
So, I would say that, you had your surgery, breast augmentation in May. I think right around the same time is when the doctor decided that we needed to try IVF instead, especially since, again, you had the limited specimen. So basically, I think around July was the time frame. July or August is when we took the first step of IVF, which is the, egg retrieval.
Mhm.
So it is a little bit of rigorous procedure where you do take some fertility medicine. You try to, make a lot of eggs, so that takes a lot of time, and there were some side effects I felt like I had, so, especially around, like, abdomen and some, like, mood, swings and things like that. But also there was a lot going on, so it's like, you just had the surgery, I'm just starting the whole process with IVF.
Yeah.
And I would say that by the time the summertime, that was, like, the main, procedure. Basically, I do have to go under anesthesia in order to get the eggs. Then we ended up getting, a couple of embryos, so, thank goodness. I think that, you hear some stories that some people only come out with, maybe a couple of embryos, but, we are really lucky to have 10, um, embryos that ended up coming out of this first cycle. And I think that some of it did attribute to, my age and things like that, so it was
Mhm.
good that we were able to start early so that we can try to maximize how many embryos we have. So kind of like, I guess, fast forward, we do try, IVF a couple of times. The first one, it's funny because I feel like I got the pregnancy results, it was like a maybe, so it
Yeah.
was like I had some pregnancy hormones, which could indicate a good, pregnancy, but it was on the lower end, so basically the doctor was like, "Come back 2 days later." They confirmed that I was not pregnant. Second time rolls around, this was a firm, negative, so I was not pregnant. And then the third time is actually when we find out that, it was successful. So that was really exciting time. I think that was, like, January or so, or
Right.
February at that
Yeah.
time. And so, we're, like, super excited. We're about to have, like, major changes, and this is something that we've been, at that time, working for, like, a year and a half at that time, just well, in the cycle, or in the timeline since I started going to the fertility clinic. So
Right.
probably, like, 6 months after trying IVF, but, 1.5 years overall. So yeah, you wanna say anything
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah. So, as Tiffany mentioned, so many steps in the process, so many failed attempts. And then finally, we get the news. from the fertility clinic that you are now pregnant, officially pregnant. And I am through the moon. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is finally happening. And I'm super excited and all of these things. So we're like starting to plan about this. We're going to start having to go to an OBGYN. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is finally manifesting. We've been working through this for so long. Um, and this is in January. And so we go for one more fertility clinic appointment, and then they kick us over to the
Yeah.
OBGYN.
So at this point, it's like kind of big news. Like, for clinic, they say that you graduate clinic and you can actually go to the OBGYN. So, at this point, I think it was like my 7-week appointment. I had just saw the heartbeat of the fetus at this time, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Skylar wasn't at the appointment because I was just the one going to the fertility clinic. And they were like, okay, like you graduate, like it's so nice. All the nurses like congratulate.
Can I just say too that even though I wasn't at that appointment, I was at every what is it called, insemination appointment? Like,
Oh, the transfer.
yeah, every embryo transfer appointment I was at. So just want to set the record straight on that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Because this was just like a daily checkup, or no, sorry, like a weekly checkup. So I would go in, they would just check the things with ultrasound. So I knew that in the future ones, Skylar would be there. So yeah, that's basically where we are. I get graduated. All the nurses say goodbye. They all sign this little card. They give me like a picture of the ultrasound, which is put on the fridge. And then we go to our OBGYN. You want to tell this part?
Yeah. So we go to the OBGYN, and this is where it gets really really sad because we go there and we're all excited. We're all full of like sparkles and happiness because we're like, we're gonna be moms. This is amazing. And go in and she gets the OBGYN doctor, the nurse does, and the doctor, turns to us and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry to tell you all this, but there is no longer a heartbeat." And this news hit me like, I guess like me running into a wall of bricks, or like a wall of, like a whatever you wanna call it, just like really hit me and devastated me. So much so that I just broke down crying right there in the moment. I couldn't handle it. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, you're kidding me. Like, we had just worked through all of this, and now we're hitting this crisis moment." Um, and, um, and I just couldn't process it, like, just straight up. I was so heartbroken over it. But I was also kinda grateful that it was the first appointment, not like the 5th or 6th or 7th appointment. So I guess that was good. But it was definitely something where I just remember it, like, coming at me and just destroying me. Um, yeah, Liz, it was just absolutely devastating, tears in the eyes, like, I was just a wreck, an emotional wreck. Um, we left the, clinic, and we went and got, um, mochi donuts, which was, like, one of our, like, coping, I don't say it's like a guilty pleasure, but it was just one of our, like, something to help us cope, but we weren't even hungry. Um, we were just, like I mean, we weren't even hungry. We were just trying to distract ourselves, really. We were trying to fill the space and cheer ourselves up with mochi donuts, and they're amazing, like, they taste so sweet, and they're delicious, but again, I think we nibbled on, like, a piece of a mochi donut, and then we were like, put it
We're
down, and
done.
we couldn't even eat it because we were just so heartbroken over it. Um, and then, we get home, and, um, that was where, you finally felt like you had space to release your
Yeah.
emotions and
So at this point, because I felt like Skylar was so upset and distraught at the OB/GYN, I felt like I had to be the strong one, which in this case was like I guess I wasn't really expecting. But again, we weren't expecting this news at all when we first went in. But yeah, basically, like, we went through the whole experience when we got home. I think that was when I started to break down, and then Skylar went into protector mode and started to comfort me.
Mhm.
And yeah, honestly, I think, um, I think you took off the rest of the day. I ended up doing just, like, a half day because I had maybe, like, an important meeting or something, but
Mhm.
I think ultimately for me to process this, it took a little bit longer than you did, because it was like, we found out the news, and then, I have to, like, get a miscarriage, so I had to figure out, like, do we wanna try this the natural way or use, like, medicine to try to induce it? So it was all like a really hard experience for this.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna come back to you, but I just want to explain real quick. Like my way of processing it was all at once, and then it was like I started recovering. But for Tiffany, because she actually had, you know, the genetic, everything that the fetus had become.
yeah.
Yeah, she had the fetus. It was going to be a longer winded recovery emotionally for her because that was still going on in her. Her body was still in that mode, and she had to like take medicine to catch up. So even though I processed it through really quickly, that wasn't going to be the case for you.
Yeah, so it took me, like, a couple more weeks, and I mean, you basically explained it pretty well, like, because I had the actual, like, physical fetus in me, like, that's where I would go through basically a roller coaster of, like, emotional and then also some of the physical changes, so and then the day, and I'll also just add that, having a miscarriage is not uncommon, so I think, most of the reasons is for genetic reason, like, the doctor reassured us, like, when she, told us, like, the bad news that, this happens, like, I think it's about, like, 1 in 5 patients actually go through something like a miscarriage like this, so she tried to reassure, like, "This was, like, not your fault, like, this happened." It is just unfortunate because we went through this whole process of IVF and getting embryo transfer, like, we had our hopes up very much, but this is a very common so, just to let anyone know who's going through something similar
Mhm.
like this, like, it's normal, and I think we just thought it was a huge deal because it took so long to, get me pregnant, basically.
Right, yeah, so exactly what Tiffany's saying here, like, because we're doing IVF, it's so intentional that we're monitoring everything, and we're so in the loop on every little detail that comes to your fertility. This was so much more devastating. Whereas, like, a lot of women do experience, like, a miscarriage or form of miscarriage, that it just doesn't hit the same way because they're not as, monitoring and they're just like, it just happens. But it can happen for a number of reasons in that first trimester, commonly due to chromosomal abnormalities. That's what was explained to us. And so we're like hopeful, or not hopeful, but that's what we think it was. Um, and so, but we were able to kind of like internalize that information and like realize from this process, like we really need to keep our emotions guarded. So we don't get like so bought in and invested the second we find out you're pregnant, because we don't truly know if it's going to manifest all the way to a baby or not. So that was really like a big learning step in the process. But something also went on for me. Well, did you have anything you wanted to comment before I continue the story?
Like,
Okay. So, while she was pregnant, it actually got me to kind of wake up to some things in my life that I realized like I had really put a lot of like, I guess, like, intentional living on the back burner. And when she got pregnant, it made me kind of think about what kind of parent, what kind of person do I wanna be when we have kids? And it got me, like, really thinking about how can I be more intentional with how I'm living my life? Because I started to realize, like, time is really borrowed, like, it's short and it goes so quickly. And so I actually started going to church during this time because I was like getting more connected to spirituality and seeing more value in, I guess, like bringing in like religion into my life, but specifically spirituality and thinking bigger about things than just myself. Um, and, like, going to church and kinda, like, rekindling that connection, again, to spirituality and thinking bigger about the purpose of life and then less about, like, living day in and day out, for myself or for just us. Um, and so it did actually cause, me to take on some, like, really big life improvement based on just this tragic, event of this miscarriage and this momentary pregnancy. Even though you weren't pregnant anymore, I was still going to church and like trying to figure out like what is my bigger purpose in life here. Which I think was like really, I think God used this to bring me back closer to Him. So I had been a Christian previously um, in my life, but I had sort of put my faith on the back burner for several years since like getting through transition, especially us getting married. I really put it on the back burner after that. And through this experience, I just kind of like felt overwhelmingly that like life comes from God. We can't make life happen. It's has to be from something more divine that's like above us. We can set the stage and we can put all the conditions right, but at the end of the day, that essence, that spark that starts life, I think it comes from God. And so that got me to be, more focused on what does God want me to do in my life. And actually, it starts the beginning of my online presence, at least when it comes to YouTube and making videos, really starts at this time. And so, someone that I had known, he's a prominent YouTuber, Benjamin Boyce. You can search his channel. And I actually did an interview with him to just explain my life story. And so I think part of my unique position in this world is just my own transition story and what has worked for me and why I am, I guess, such a happy transitioner. Ultimately, at the end of the day, and what steps I've taken to build up that psychological resilience and help spare myself decisions that would otherwise lead to regret, and trying to advocate and speak out about these experiences more, has been something that really I internalized and recognized through this process of you just being pregnant for basically 2 months, which is pretty crazy to say. Now, let's take your perspective on this transformation that I'm going through, and see what do you make of it?
Yeah, honestly, I think right when we were going to the OBGYN and then you told me, like, you wanted to, explore your spirituality again and
Mhm,
going to church. I was a little bit surprised at first, but I don't think I was, too taken aback because this was definitely part of your background and, again, we had just sorta moved to the area, so we still were looking to build a community, and why not try it at, church, right? So that was, I guess, like a kind of like a natural progression to things where it was like, we're trying to, be better versions of ourselves, try to find a community, and I think that overall I was pretty, I guess, like, proud of the fact that we were making some of these, like, big realizations and big steps to try to make a difference in your life and share your story and hopefully be able to help others along the way. So I know that that was, like, a big motivator, and there was, like, a couple other things that, you know, I know that you were pretty, fearful in terms of, putting yourself out there and, ultimately having, people, treat you not in the best way and, saying such, like, mean things that, people who don't really know you can only say because it's online. I know there was a lot of fear in that and just, like, sharing your story, so, overall, like, I do think that, you have been in some ways sharing some of your steps and what we're trying to do here in terms of, like, sharing our story is to make others more aware about, some of the steps, and sometimes when you just see, like, YouTubers, you don't know how they get there, so hopefully by us telling our story, you can be able to, like, engage and ask questions, but also
mhm.
ultimately just know that, there's a lot of other, like, normal couples out there, and so that's part of the reason why, like, we wanna share stories.
Yeah, I think, another piece of this is that, when I went to transition, I felt like there was, a lot of negative stories of trans women with partners, and I wanted to show a different side of that with you, because I feel like we don't have that same, like, the whole trans widows thing? Um, that's where, like, I wanted to give an alternative version to not trans widows, but trans couples. Or like a partner who's trans and then one who's not, non-trans or cis or whatever you wanna say, and just kinda demonstrate, like, there is a diversity of reactions to people that go through this process, and not all of it is so negative, because that's what I read a lot about when I was making the decision to transition. I just wanna take a moment to, spotlight the comments because I always like to do that. Um, Thank you, Racer. I really appreciate your sympathy and, like, you relating with this. It was really hard to put myself out there, but the great thing about being online and building up that confidence is you do like, at least for me, I began to realize that, like, I had a lot of negative reactions to the Benjamin Boyce interview because he's a very conservative, channel, So the comments were really just, like, negative overall, but, I realized, like, they don't really affect me. Like, if anything, it's given me more motivation to get out there and share my story and help other people make sense of themselves, because I feel like there's a lot of negative energy around transition, um, and, like, I just, like, wanna bring that more positive energy and show that, some people it really does help them, and it helps them get through hard times. So I really appreciate that. Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh,
Oh, hold
let's
on. This is
spotlight another
a
one.
little twist. I do wanna just show Liz, the fire heart. I love that emoji. Thank you so much, Liz. I love your support. You're an amazing friend. We know that. All right. And then, wow, Racer coming back in. Yeah, I was trying to defend you in the comments. It was discouraging to see the hate. Yeah, so okay, yeah, so Racer has seen it, totally knows that. Um, and I really appreciate that because, I have very few defenders, so it's like, that means so much to me, just know that I really appreciate that, and I'm actually that deserves a star right there.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah. Do you wanna
Well, yeah, I think we're getting, this webcast went a little longer than we thought, but we can probably just take some questions right now if you do have any. I'll start off by asking you one, Skylar, but out of like all of the, the ups and downs about your social transition, just thinking about more of that rather than all of your physical ones, was there anything that you would have done differently, looking back in the last like, 3 to 5 years?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. I don't know if this is specifically to the, okay, hold on. Let me just show these comments. Liz, completely agree. That is 100% true. People will straight up assume, and they'll always assume the worst. It's, like, so annoying, and I'm like, "How do you have the energy to type this comment based on, like, false information or just, like, extrapolated assumptions?" Like, it drives me crazy. That is so, so true. And then, yeah, Racer, absolutely, yes. And so now to your question, I do wanna say, like, when it came to my social transition, I think the biggest mistake that I made, was really, putting pressure on people to say she, her pronouns for me. I really wish in hindsight I had not cared at all and not made the mistake of saying, "I want you to treat me with she, her pronouns," because that honestly, you can't tell it's okay to kinda, like, indicate, like, if somebody's curious and they wanna know, um, how you wanna be treated, then it's okay to kinda say, "Yeah, this is how I prefer to be treated with, the she, her feminine pronouns." But in hindsight, because I was, like, leaning into the scripts of, I guess, a little bit of gender ideology, to be honest, that, like, I can own that and I can kinda, like, put pressure on that. I wish I hadn't done that. And I just let people say whatever about me. If he, him comes to their mind, that's fine. Like, I don't wanna control the energy. I wanna just let people express themselves how they wanna express themselves. So that was mistake number 1 that I would have changed. Um yeah, 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 go for it.
So I think just coming out, just knowing like your personality of like trying not to make big waves or like or not waves, but like try to hurt people or make people uncomfortable. That's like the right phrase. I do think it is good to kind of put yourself out there to especially for people in the beginning, letting them know like that you're serious about this and at least like stating it to know that this is what you want. But I do agree that it's probably better in order, especially when it comes to some of your immediate family, being able to be more okay if like the misgendering. So just kind of want to put in that little balance that it's good to put yourself out there and say like what you desire, but also be accommodating and understanding if people mess up or they may not agree. Because again, like any like external factors you can't control, you can only control like your own emotions. So the fact that you're like also at this current moment not upset when people do it, I think that's really great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the second, piece that I wanted to follow up on there, this is sort of medical, but I'm gonna put it in the social category because I started this in my social phase, is I kinda wish I had started the hair removal treatment when I started HRT instead of before HRT, because I didn't realize how much testosterone drove hair growth, And like what basically I got all these laser hair treatments on like my body and the the testosterone. Like I wasn't on HRT. I was just socially transitioning, as I would say, because I was wearing girl clothes and I was like trying to get my body hair down. But it would just grow back so aggressively. And like it was all because I was still just had testosterone coursing through my veins. And so like
You're like going was like paddling upriver because you're trying to get rid of it, but because of the testosterone, I was like just fighting back so hard.
yes, exactly. It was like swimming upriver or paddling upriver. It was just like not happening, and I was like going against the current, which never worked out well. Oh, I just joined. Oh, hi, Brad. Hey, good to see you. Oh, we got a
Yeah, we
question.
have
Okay,
some
we got a couple
questions.
questions here. Okay, one from Liz. Have you all gotten any hate because you both stayed together after Oh, this is a good question. This is for you. She said after Sky's transition. So, you wanna take it away, Tiff?
Yeah, I'll start off. So I think overall, we generally haven't gotten hate. Also, I feel like both of our workplaces are very like pro LGBT and pro transition. So whenever, like when I was going through that socially and having to quote come out to my coworker Tyler, there wasn't like but I think the hardest part was our immediate family. I don't know if it's like the best word to categorize it, but I would say that people would what was it? Accept but not affirm. I think that's like the phrase,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah, so I would say the biggest pushback on my side was probably my mom, and, it was really unfortunate, but I think at the end of the day, it is, like, my life, so it is, like, my decision to stay with you, but I have to say that it was a little bit hard, to share the, news about our transition with my mom, and, our relationship has changed after that. But I would say that, we're still working together. I think one of the important things is to make sure that, you continue to have connections even if it's really hard. So, I still see my mom during the holidays and things like that, and, I keep her, like, in my life because that is the choice to do that. I think because of this, situation though, like, I have to be kind of, like, choosy in some of the ways that I, like, talk about relationships.
Mhm.
So that's, like, kinda like my side. I don't know if you wanna, like,
Yeah.
elaborate on your side.
Yeah, yeah. I I wouldn't say we've gotten any, like, hate directly. I do think there's, like, a contingent of online commenters that always are like, "Hope you know what you're getting into," or they belittle your decision to stay with me, as if you don't really know what you're doing. That yeah, you
And
wanna
I think yeah, that, like, people are like, "Oh, yeah, uh" I don't really know how to phrase I was actually gonna say something else, but I totally agree with that. I think the other thing that is a little bit discouraging is kind of people making assumptions on our decision to have a family, and then basically saying, like, "Why do you wanna have kids? Because you're going through this. This is just gonna make their lives a lot difficult." And that kinda gets me too, indirectly, I guess, because
yeah.
yeah.
At the end of the day, they have 2 loving parents, and that's what matters most. Yes. No, totally, and so that would be, like, where I would, like, say the closest thing to hate that we've gotten is those 2 things, in terms of you saying um, and then we have a question from Eraser. Oh, this is a good one. How long did it take you to get your voice so femme? Also, Tiffany, how are the changes for you in regard to voice changes? Okay, this I'll take this one. So for me, it was, I guess you could say, like, through HRT, like, really helping me just kinda, like, stretch my vocal cords more, but I've always had a wide vocal range ever since I was young. So, like, I could do what I would call girl voice when I was, like, I don't know, 10 or 11, and then, like, I went through puberty and my voice dropped for sure, but I still retained the ability to stretch it up. But the only way I could do that was if I, tightened my vocal range significantly, which was like a muscle, adaptability, I guess you could say, that I sort of had to tap into, and, the easiest way to strengthen that muscle was through singing songs. Um, and so I never did any voice training, I never did any, like, intentional work on it necessarily. I always just started the day with a cup of coffee and then singing like 2 songs. And if I warmed up my voice enough, then I realized like I could maintain a higher range of speaking that just kind of keeps it elevated and helps me, well, just be in that feminine range pretty succinctly, which I mean was a huge blessing. But basically, yeah, like I did it through singing songs and like stretching my voice through like, getting it up there. Now, I will say the one caveat to this is that it absolutely resets every single day. Like, I wake up in the morning and it is like it's not all the way down to the like where it used to be, but it's definitely in like the androgynous, like coded range. I mean, like, when I first wake up and before I've had my coffee, before I've talked to anyone, it's a lot more raspy and it's like, you know, it almost sounds like I have a cold or something. Like kind of how it would come across on like speaking on a mic like that. But yeah, I was really fortunate that I didn't have to voice train. Because a lot of trans women do, and it's a tough process because it's hard to get all the way to that like feminine, distinctly femininely coded range. Do you want to add a comment to that? Because you would sing songs with me in the mornings.
Yeah, that was actually what I was gonna say. So I didn't really feel like there was much change when you went from like lower to higher. In fact, I actually did kind of support it in a way because when you would sing your songs in the morning, I would just join in. It's just kind of more fun that way. So I don't know if this is like just like different for me, but honestly, the voice change was like I was pretty accepting of it. I just try to make it fun, if that makes sense. But I think the other thing that one unintended consequence of your transition that I did not expect at all was that when we would go out in public, people would just always assume that we're friends, and so that one caught me off guard a little bit more, which is not directly to your question, Racer, but it is funny because now people always assume, or I should say, like wait staff, they would always ask like, is this one check or two check? Because they just sometimes they just assume we're friends. So that's like a change in just like how we're perceived because when you see like a couple, most people they automatically assume, oh, it's one check, let me just give it to them. But for us, we now make it a joke like, are they gonna ask? Or are they just gonna assume that like it's just one check?
Assume it's 2 chicks.
Oh yeah.
No, but it's so true. Like I think we always make a joke that we're forever roommates. Because that's what everyone always thinks when they first see us. But then we're like, no, we're a couple, it's a thing. But no one expects like 2 feminine women to be together. That's what it really comes down to. If I played the male role a little bit more, like I don't know, just had a more butch like essence or a more butch presentation, then I think we would get like more assumed like we're together. It just doesn't happen really. So it's just what it is. But yeah, that was a great question though. I mean, the voice one is always like an interesting topic to talk through. And then yeah, Fred caught this. Fred, we're glad to have you here. For those of you who may not know on the stream, I did a video. I've done a couple videos with Fred, but particularly one where I shared my life story. If you're interested, you can go check it out on her channel. I highly suggest you do. She makes some awesome content about like the intersection of Christianity and LGBT identity. And I've really enjoyed her videos. She has an extensive library of awesome takes. And she knows Persian. Just as a little tidbit, because I think that's so interesting. Yeah, Liz, so true. We are all like, I really do think that, at least I know for me, being my parents, seeking my parents' love and acceptance was absolutely something that like I've always been wired to do. It's always been a part of me. It's always been a part of you. Um, and I don't know if that's like a people pleaser thing, but like I always have wanted to, I always like wanted to please my parents. That's why coming out to them was such a big milestone for me, to release that like emotional pressure and trauma, and honestly, a lot of shame too that I wasn't living up to their expectations and standards. So that was just a big deal. Nice. Okay, here we go. Next question. Is walking like you sound a conscious effort? Um, what do you make of this question? Do you know? Do you know what she means? do you want to interpret the question?
Hey.
Okay, I'll answer it. Okay. I think she's saying, like, is walking for me, like, walking like you sound comfortable. I'm really trying to understand what this means. I think she means, like, can I walk femininely? Um, and it's like, the answer would be yes. I mean, I feel like that's pretty natural for me. Like, I don't think there's, like, a way that's walking is feminine, but, like, I can add a little bit of sway to the hips if I want to. But, like, that's not hard, but, like, I don't usually need to because I kinda naturally do that already. Like, when you see me walk, you don't think, "Oh, that's a male coded walk."
Yeah. You don't have, like, the swagger of, like, yeah.
And we know what that's like. Um,
Let's add another question then.
yeah, maybe she'll clarify it below. Racer says, so that's interesting, your voice thank you, Racer, like, seriously, I don't know if I've seen Racer on the screen cast before, but you're awesome, and thank you so much. Um, yeah, I'm really fortunate, honestly. I just say I'm lucky, and I'm glad that that's the case. Um, you know, because it could easily not be the case, right? Like, most of the time, that's the
Let's just
case.
clarify. She
Um
meant talking,
Oh,
not walking.
oh, okay. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I meant talking. Okay, that is very helpful here.
So
Is
it's
talking like you
talking like
sound um, I guess. Is it a conscious it's partially conscious, partially not. It's conscious, especially when I first start talking in the daytime, like I was saying earlier. Like, when I'm warming up, it's extremely conscious. Now, it's not. I'm on autopilot completely. I'm not putting any mental energy towards how I sound right now. It's just how it comes out of my voice, and it's 'cause I'm so, like, warmed up and I'm in that tighter vocal range. So I don't need to think about it consciously. It
Also,
just
you
yeah.
talk more from your throat rather than your chest now, so it's also a little bit easier that way.
Say that again?
Like, at this range, you're talking more from your throat rather than your chest, so it's a little
Yeah.
easier for you to speak at the higher range too.
Yeah, totally. It just kinda naturally goes up into my throat, and then it just, kinda flows from there. Just wanna jump up to this comment, lesbian erasure. Yes, this is directly when we were talking about people assuming,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that we're just friends, which we get a lot. We're really used to it, and honestly, I feel like at this point, we just make jokes about it.
That's the best when you can just make jokes of a uncomfortable situation. But I think, let's see, who's the next one?
Oh, you're welcome, Brad, of course. We
Yo, Brad.
yeah, more than happy to support your channel. Go, Brad. Aw. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay, this is good. Tiff, you had mentioned in the first episode that you were afraid Skylar's personality would change. Do you
Oh,
feel
yeah.
it has or hasn't?
That's a great question, Elizabeth. So overall, I would say that Skylar's personality hasn't changed. What I guess, like, in the beginning, when you're about to embark on something new, like, fear is kind of the thing that kind of holds you back from doing anything. But I would say, like, through all of the, the years that we've been together, I would say, Skylar's personality and heart has not changed. So, a lot of the things that she had, a lot of the values that she had pre-transition, are still there today, and kind of guides like a lot of the things that we do and say. So that actually has been, a really great thing. I would say, like, you do read stories where because of the transition or because people get really wrapped up in what they do, how they look, and things like that, you may seem like different priorities out of that person, but I would say, like, overall, like, we keep saying this, but because we keep talking about how we felt and we communicated and we were honest, and I think we were just overall like loyal to each other. That really just showed up in, like, the love and how we express love to each other. And I think overall, yeah, I don't think you've changed, even though, like, you're physically changed.
I think there's, like, an element of I know this question was directed at you, but I'm just gonna comment on this. I do think there's an element of personality shifting a little bit. Like, I feel more free to express femininity or feminine opinions on things than before. Like, before transition, I'd be a little bit more guarded because I didn't wanna, like, signal to you that I might be, like, trans earlier. like before I was like comfortable with myself, because a lot of the journey was me getting comfortable with who I actually was. Ironically, which is the funny thing through all of this. Um, but I would say that there was like some of that shifting a little bit, but there was never like a full change. Nothing that you would point to and be like, that's so different than who you were before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So to that extent, you're absolutely right. Like there wasn't any like distinct change. Um, and I already looked ahead and hard at this, but parents are number one to kids. Yes, so true. Like that's just as simple as it gets. Um, then we had the clarification, and then okay, Racer is jumping back in here to say
Yeah.
voice changes. Oh
It is
yeah,
hard.
it is hard. I mean, like and I totally resonate with this because, like, yeah, I think for a lot of people, there's an element of when you are like focusing on your voice, you want it to be higher up. You do have to exert a good bit of mental energy. I mean, it's like because you're monitoring how you sound and you're making sure that you want to sound a certain way. And that's where it's like I empathize greatly with that because that is a tough place to be. And it's like, you know, is there a way to just get it to stay higher? This is where like voice surgery really makes an appeal for some trans women to go try that. But I don't know, that scares me a little bit. But I do know that exists. I don't want to say like that's a good idea or anything because I have no
You
idea
haven't
really
done it.
about it. Yeah, and I haven't done it. Um, but like that's where it's just like, oh gosh, like that is tough.
Also, I wanted to just talk a little bit about, like, intersectionality too, because I
Mm,
feel like when there's a lot of things that are happening, like, you have to be conscious about so many other people's, like, perception of you, their biases, and so there is that, like, extra layer of, having to monitor your voice and making sure that, 1, you're accurately trying to say, like, what you're trying to get across, but it's also about perception or, like, how you're saying it, so I know it is really hard, but, I mean, you can only say how hard it is, but I know that it is hard to, like, constantly try to monitor so many different things while you're just trying to live your normal life, so, I don't know, we're rooting you on in a way that hopefully it goes a little better for you.
of course, absolutely. And then okay, Liz had another question. Um, okay, how do you think God, Jesus, not scripture, sees transition? Oh, I love this question. Yeah, and this I think comes. I pull inspiration from the story where Jesus. There's Jesus and there's a prostitute that comes to him. And I think this is really emblematic of the love that Jesus extends to um, I don't know, just like people that struggle. I mean, that's kind of how I see it. Because like when you look at Jesus's life, um, he is so sympathetic, and this is really in the New Testament only because Jesus is not in the Old Testament. And the Old Testament, God is a lot more judgy, way more judgy because he's like, everything's under the old law, and there's a lot of like rules and regulations, and it's a much more regimented relationship with God because Jesus hasn't come as the high priest, the mediator for us. But in the New Testament, he comes and he demonstrates love through his sacrifice. And he hangs out with people that society has shunned. They have literally like outcast these people. And they come to him because they're seeking love and they're seeking like acceptance and hope. And just like really hope is the big theme that Jesus brings. And I think that is how I think Jesus would react to someone who comes through transition is he sees that person for who they really are. And he can see the struggle, he can see the life pattern of decisions, and he is there to love and ultimately accept everyone as a child of God. That doesn't mean that like, you know, things aren't sin or whatever like that. I mean, there's a whole lot of perspective that you can search for in there, but I do think the essence of Jesus is love and understanding and grace and mercy, because that's why he died on the cross for our sins. That's the essence of Jesus's mission, to come and save the lost and to, really be that intermediator, mediator. What am I trying to
Yeah.
say here? I don't know. But I would say like that is how I generally think Jesus would react to this. Um, so to that extent, I would lean more into the mercy and love of God and focus more on the fruit of that person's life, rather than like applying our human perceptions and judgments onto the decisions that people make, especially when we can't
Yeah.
understand the driver motivators for the reason for the decisions that they have made. Do you want to add something?
Um, I'll just say I'm still exploring my spirituality, but I do want to emphasize that it's not like humans' interpretation of scripture, but it is really like the relationship of God that's most important. And we know that through like Jesus' actions that he does show love and acceptance. And I think that's what like we try to focus on the most, just making sure that, it's not like the body of the church itself that can really say or like, persuade or, try to um act for us, but it's really like what is God and Jesus saying. So that's what I try to focus on.
Yeah. No, I love that. All right, here we go. Oh yeah,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
racer. So true. Yeah, using more hand gestures when coming out as trans, totally a thing. Like I feel like I was already pretty gestury before, but I got even more expressive.
I got more gestures because of you. I don't know, maybe it's just like a mirror thing. Like you did it more, I did it more. Now we just keep doing it and building.
It's true. So there's like a what would you call it effect where like I do something, you do something to like copy
Yeah,
it.
I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, I don't know what the like exact word is, but it's like an amplifying effect
Yeah.
where like I do something, she does something, and so we just got like very expressive. But yeah, hand gestures. That's yeah, definitely. I think a more of a signal of femininity because it's expressiveness. And so that's like yeah, I totally see that. Um, that's awesome. And then Lizica's like yes, and then so true, Tiffany, so freaking true. Aw, Racer's awesome. Like I hope they stick around. Amazing.
Maybe we'll have time for 1 or 2 more questions. It's getting a little
Oh, is
long.
it getting? Oh no, we're just crossed 2 hours. Okay. Well, here we go. We got a question right here. Um, Sky, have you ever been clocked after your final transitional phase? I'm really having to think about this because I guess she's saying after well, it would be after my breast augmentation.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound conceited if I say no, but it actually is no. I don't think I've ever been clocked.
In person.
In person, yeah. Yeah, it's true. I have never, yeah, I have not actually been clocked, um, after my final I wasn't even clocked after IFFS. I was clocked definitely before IFFS, definitely. Facial feminization surgery really honed in on a lot of the masculine cues that people would otherwise read, and then getting the breast augmentation makes it so unlikely that somebody would clock me, but no one actually has. There have been people that are otherwise told that I'm trans and then they know, but I have yet to encounter someone who, um, like, asked me, like, "Are you trans?" or anything to that degree. It is only online that, people will be like, "Oh, we can always tell," et cetera. But my favorite example is when I went to Gen Spect. So I went to this conference. I really wish you had been there, Tiff, so you could have like backed this up. But I have other people that were there. But this conference was called the Gen Spec conference, and it was in 2023. It was in Denver, Colorado. And I really support the stories of the people at this conference. Like it was a lot of detransitioners, a lot of trans widows. It was a lot of people who have been disaffected or otherwise harmed by gender ideology and all the toxicity that comes with like truly believing that people are perfectly the opposite sex the moment they announce it or whatever. Really like all the non-scientific reasons to pursue transition. That's what I think of when I think of gender ideology. And so all these people have been harmed by it and they're platforming detransitioners and they're speaking out about it. But there's a lot of women there that otherwise would, in my words, or like in the words of others I've heard, relish the opportunity to pick a trans woman out of the women's bathroom. And I used the women's bathroom the whole time I was there and never had a problem because the truth is they had no idea. And in fact, the second day that I was there, I had told people I was trans at the bar after the conference was like concluded for the first day. I told people I was trans and I'd gotten into a long discussion that was awesome with another turf. I'm going to say turf in quotes because she was honestly amazing. But she said she identified more with the turf style of belief. And I literally the next day was in the line for the women's bathroom because when the sessions would break, the women's restroom would line up like crazy. And like I was like, I'm not going to the men's. Like I always go to the women's. Like that's just default mode for me. Like it's not like any other, it's just the way I live now. Because I've switched over to that gender, signal category. So that's where people assume I'm gonna go. And I'm literally standing there in line and she's right behind me and she goes, "Hi, Skylar." And I'm like, "Oh, hi." I'm not gonna say your name, but I was like, "Oh, hi, so and so." And we just had a lovely conversation and nobody cared because nobody knew. Like, we're just there talking and like, and it was really chill. And like, I was so funny. Maya Poet, who's like out on Twitter, I mean, she's cool. She has a little bit over, like, in my opinion, a little overly GC opinions sometimes, but otherwise is fine. Like I was literally in there with her and like washing my hands, and I don't think she knew. She might have known. I don't know. Because I like told people at the bar. It's kind of hard to keep track of who knew and who didn't, and I don't really like bother to do that. But that to me was like very much like proof in the pudding, so to speak, on like that I can pass. And like it's funny that I went to a conference to
I
prove
thought
that
you were gonna
myself.
tell us the story about the man who was like, "No, you're not trans." As well.
Oh! So I forgot to mention at this conference too. I think I told Sasha. It might have been Sasha. I had from the Gender Wider Lens podcast. I'm not sure who it was. There were definitely a couple people that I had told I was a trans woman, and like standing right there in a little circle of discussion. After one of the speakers had gone, they like challenged this guy. He was a big, tall black guy, just standing directly in front of me in this like circle of people talking. And that this person beside me, whoever it was I told, I honestly, I wish I could remember this better, was like, "Did you know she's trans?" And he was like, "No,
He's like,
no,
"No."
you're kidding me. She is not.
He couldn't
This,
accept it.
this is not true," because he had just finished saying that like they all don't pass. They all look really clocky. And then I get brought up as an example of who's not clocky. And he just was in disbelief, complete disbelief. And anyways, we had a great time laughing about it. It was just funny. Like you just have to laugh at these things. But of course, there's plenty of people online that are happy to fire off that comment that says like no trans woman passes. And that's because they see so many non-passing trans women, they just get it in their heads that no trans woman passes.
And then the trans women who pass, they're like under the radar. They don't want to make a big scene, so like they don't know about them.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. So that's exactly it. And there was even one time. This is just another funny story in the bathroom where remember when before? No, this was after I had facial feminization surgery, but before I had breast augmentation. We were in Georgetown. We went in that restaurant, and I was using the bathroom, the women's bathroom, and the stall lock was broken, and so it didn't like secure all the way. And like I was like, "Oh, it's okay. No woman's gonna come in here and try to use this stall. They'll see that I'm in here. It's fine." And so I start going to the bathroom, doing my thing, and literally right after I start going to the bathroom, and I'm sitting there like doing my thing, a woman comes into the bathroom and goes straight for my stall, and I'm like, "No, you're not gonna open the door. You're not gonna open the door." And next thing I know, she opens the door and goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and then closes the door, and I'm like bright red in the face, completely mortified. Like this did not just happen to me. And like I'm just like, "Oh, this did not happen. This did not happen. Okay, whatever. I'm gonna wash my hands and get out of here because she's probably so mad that a trans woman's using the bathroom." And like I'm just like thinking all these things because I'm always like, I'm really hard on myself. So I'm just thinking this. And I get out there and I start washing my hands. And she wraps up a lot quicker than I expected, comes out and starts washing her hands. And I'm just like right beside me. And I'm just like, "Okay, it's fine." And like she's like very chill about it. And I'm like, somehow we get making small talk about like her coming in and opening the stall door. And I was like, "I'm so sorry," like, or like, I didn't actually say I'm so sorry. It was just like, "Oh, this like event happened, this thing." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, sometimes these things happen." And she was like, "Oh, it's totally fine. We're both women." And she had that look in her face that was like genuinely.
So genuine. I mean, I wasn't there, but this is how I interpret the event. I
like,
talk like I'm there.
Speak on behalf of this, Tiff. Go ahead. Go off. No, but it was just so genuine and kind of almost like I don't know if I should feel bad that like she couldn't know my biological sex, but I'm like, I don't think it just means that the signals are so feminine that it's okay and it's fine. And it's like,
You're not
this
causing
is,
trouble. You're not out there.
of course not. And most aren't, but there are some that are. And that's where it's like, oh, how can we protect women too? Because I do believe that women need protection from the predators that
Yeah.
are faking to be trans, like faking being trans. Honestly, because there are definitely some like that. Anyways, so the answer, I'm going to come out, Liz, and just say no. It's a definite no.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then we
Alright.
have
Yeah.
I love
The hand
yes, the
gestures.
hands. Yes, yes. Oh, that's the best. Okay, wait, here we go. I honestly thought you were cis.
Oh.
Oh, racers! Seriously, I have to, this is a definite star comment. Come on, like this racer is so nice. Oh my gosh. I wish everyone was like this online. Like, come on, like, people are so great. Some people are so great. Here's Liz saying yes. Take that turfs. See, the thing is, though, is I didn't really mean it like that. I
Yeah.
didn't want to be like, take that turfs. Like, I think they have some valid things to say, but they have gone like a little bit overboard in terms of policing people's presentations and trying to shame like unaesthetic demonstrations of femininity. Like the whole thing with Dressgate at the conference that happened afterwards. And what's so funny is I'm in that photo. I'm just in the background and nobody knows. And it's like, because Phil stands out, he's and it's yeah, anyways, it's just a whole mess. Yeah, we can always tell. Yeah, no, you can't.
Yeah.
Yes, completely true, Racer. That's exactly it. I'm not gonna go around and like make a big deal that people can't tell about it for me because it's just not about that for me. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, that is exactly correct. There are gonna be passing trans women that just move through society, and it's just how it is. Liz! Oh my gosh! Do you
Okay.
see this?
Yeah,
Do you see Liz? Oh my gosh! No, I have to put this up there because oh my gosh, Liz, you did not. I am always sitting, okay? Always sitting. I can't believe you put this in there. I know, but she still said it, so she's just trying to spice up the stream a little bit. No standing ever. Nope, no, no.
That also will just make you look uplifted.
Oh yeah, well, also it's just like no, because then I have to like confront my genitals like very overtly, and it's like I don't want to do that. Like, I mean, yeah, I don't have that relationship with things up there. All right, let's see here. Yeah, their trans star is off. Yes, yes. Well, they would like to think it's tuned up to the max because I'm sure they're all trying to look for it. They really want to do that kind of thing. That opportunity to and reinforce their space. But in this case, it is true. It was off. And again, there's always going to be some trans women that do end up passing. Um, yeah, it honestly was. It came down to that. It's sort of like, great for that. It was very affirming. Yeah. Oh, okay, here's somebody. I think we had on the I think I've seen comment on the streams in the past. I think. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining us on the stream. Like, yeah, I love that. I love positive energy is what we're about and what we love. Thank you so much for joining us here. Here we go. We got a comment from Liz. Seen saw her on the Voice interview. I thought she was a woman, like a trans widow or something. You know what's so funny about going to that conference? Most people there thought I was a mom. That was the number one
concerned mom.
a concerned parent. That's what I was honorary. I was an honorary concerned parent until I told them I'm a trans woman. And then they would always be shocked. Like, wow, okay, that's something. But yeah, that's why in general life, that's how I'm perceived. And so I'm really used to it at this point. Uh, LOL, and then same. Aw, yes. And then, oh, here we go. I'm also an autosexual trans femme, so I have a lot of empathy for others like me who are trying to understand ourselves. So much toxicity for certain. Thank you. Thank you. I've been saying this for a while, and I'm glad you brought up the autosexuality piece because I am like really honest about this. And this is something like that I've been getting into a little bit more as I explore like the science behind why I'm so happy with my transition. Do you want to comment anything on this? Because I'll just say like, yeah, this is definitely like the first time that I've really, like, been bringing this topic out a little bit more, and I really have in my heart that this is a key ingredient when it comes to transition and something that we need to talk about more and we need to address. And right now, there's a lot of language about this, and it's usually in the terms of like AGP or autogynephilia, which I think is like a good science term for describing the autogyn philia, which is like person, and it's like self love of oneself as a woman, something like that. And I think it's like very contentious though, and there's a lot of like misunderstandings about this term. And I really do view myself as having more of a sexuality when it comes to the patterns of emotions and behaviors that have manifested out of my struggles and my issues with gender dysphoria in terms of motivating my transition. And so this is definitely somewhere that I want to explore a little bit more. I think on the next stream, I want to talk a little bit more about this, or at least do some subject topic videos on this subject, because I think it needs a little bit more discussion, and we need to be talking about it in ways that aren't stigmatizing, to help people understand like this is a genuine way to handle those types of feelings and those types of issues. And so I'm really glad you brought this up, because yeah, there is so much toxicity surrounding this topic, and that is definitely a starred comment right there. Yeah, lots of stars.
All right, what do we want to say to wrap up?
Oh
Today's
no, are you
video?
trying to wrap me up? No. Okay, hold on. Let's just get through these comments here. I'm gonna keep this here forever. All right, let's see here. Wow, stories are awesome. And then here we go. We got, yeah, it's inspiring how honest you are. Sorry to keep you guys. I know you're trying to wrap things up.
This is the reason why I said it. Reese's trying to help us out.
Reese's like, I know she's ready to go, and Skylar's having a fun time. Okay, we need to wrap things up. No, yeah, no worries. Oh, Liz, so true. Can I just say this real quick? Auto het is okay. So Liz is adding on the heterosexual component to this because that's technically there's two forms of autosexuality. There's like auto homosexuality and auto heterosexuality. And because I am bisexual, that puts me in the auto hetero category, which is, and that explains why I'm partnered with you because you're a woman and I am a natal biological man. So there you go. And that explains it. And I completely agree. It is absolutely okay. The more we can acknowledge this in a neutral terms and less charged discussion, the better. And that's why it's so important to talk about this stuff. Okay. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Liz. It's been awesome having you on the stream. I think we're going to wrap up here. Is there anything you want to say to close?
Um, well, it's been so great getting to answer some questions and really, again, just share our stories. I think there's a lot of narratives out there that really show a negative or really like challenging part of transition, especially when it also comes with partners. So I did just want to say that it's important to also share some of positive stories and also just show like the realness of it too. Like it wasn't all like rainbows that we're here, we're happy, we're smiling, but it was because of all of the trials that we went through, especially early in the relationship, that allowed us to get to where we are as like a really strong couple. So if you're going through challenging times, like one of the things I wish I did more was to reach out to some of my friends who were supportive and be able to just talk through some of my struggles. But I'm really glad with where we are now, and I do hope that we continue to share our story and be able to share, some of the things that kept us together, kept us, being able to, continue to have such a strong relationship, and ultimately just like have hope or share hope with that. Even if something as challenging as transition, like people can make it work.
I don't know if I can do justice to what you just said, but I completely agree. I just think like, I hope to show like more positive stories surrounding transition, but also like you said, the components of the transition process and decision making that really led to this outcome. Because I really do believe it is the decisions that were made that helped this happen. And I want to help other, trans. Um, I don't like to say just trans people, but people that are gender questioning. Anyone that's in the sphere or proximity, whether it is someone in your family that might be questioning their gender, or whether it's you yourself. That is what this content is for: is to help those people and to help other people just de-radicalize the conversation and see that there are people that are genuinely just like existing and it is not a problem and disruption. I'm not out here to try to, in the words of one of my good friends, Brianna Wu, I'm not out here to declare a jihad on gender. I'm out here to just help de-radicalize and normalize the conversations. And that's what I hope to do. So
Alright.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right.
Hope you
Thank
have a
you
good
all.
one.
Yeah, take care.